Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Had a week off to digest UFC 294, Islam versus Volk 2, and this Saturday, head down to Sao Paulo, main event here at heavyweight. We got Jailton Almeida taking on well-known veteran Derek Lewis here, coming in on short notice. Co-main event is at welterweight. One of the rising prospects, Gabriel Bonfim, taking on his first big test, Nicholas Dalby. It's a 13-fight card, man. Tons of Brazilian talent. Told you earlier, I'm pretty excited about this, man. I think it's a pretty solid fight card. Excited to break it down with you. Won't waste too much time. Please like and subscribe if you haven't before. I'll hand it over to you to recap how we finished up last week. What I think was over a combined 7 units for us, man. Good night for us both.
Yeah, it always sucks whenever we're both coming off a winning week and then we have to wait a week in between before we can get back onto it. But it was an awesome week for us, man. We love the pay-per-views. We get fighters that we have a ton of different previous fights to gain knowledge from and make these bets. And you see us, like, I'm about to go over your card, laying juice on fighters, but because we have good reason to, they've shown us in the past that they can deliver. And we'll touch on that in your first fight. On your card is Islam Makhachev at minus 240. You had him for 2.5 units. He looked minus 1,000 out there, man. I honestly didn't expect that at all. I expected a submission, but definitely covered his price tag and is the rightful lightweight champion for sure. Then we go to the podcast underdog, a plus 270. We're both on him. Muhammad Naimov. Now, you know, maybe a point should have been taken. There was some, if you ain't cheating, you're not trying, you know.
That's right.
At plus 270, he was obviously the side. Like, that's what I think is the biggest takeaway from that. So yeah, love to be on that one as well. You had a parlay with Sharabutin Magomedov and Magomed Ankalaev. You know, I don't know. It's not an Ankalaev fight without some controversy, man. Right. That sucks. You ended up making a little money still with Magomedov at only minus 210 in that parlay. Then you had a Chimaev Aliskerov parlay. That was my biggest parlay of the night as well. Mm-hmm. That was, you know, the Chimaev fight a little closer than we would have liked, I'm sure. Right. But I think that there were 2 toss-up rounds and one absolutely 10-8 round for Chimaev. So is what it is. I think he should have got the win. Ikram Aliskerov, he's going to be like minus 700 until he rematches Khamzat Chimaev, maybe, you know, like I think the books really like him, and I like him too. He's very good. The under in the Dumas versus Abu Azaitar fight, I don't know, man. I liked that a lot too.
But it never looked like it was going to hit, though.
No, it didn't really. It was weird. I don't really know how to cap Cedric as Dumas, to be honest with you. Looking forward to his next fight, but hopefully he's up against somebody who has fought recently, you know, in the past 3 years. That'd be nice. Then we move on to your other parlay, Saeed Nurmagomedov and the under 2.5 rounds for Trevor Peak, Muhammad Yahya. Saeed covered his price tag completely. The under 2.5, I was also on that as well. Just didn't hit. Trevor Peak is also kind of a tough guy to cap, man. I think that he's pretty wild. And
he's a wrestler now.
He also has some pretty legit wrestling. Not really sure where his ceiling is, but I'd like seeing him in the UFC, so I hope he stays around. And then you had Naimov by TKO at plus 600. Almost had it. So close in that first round.
Exchange.
Nathaniel Wood's really, really good at getting caught and popping right back up. He's done that in his last 3 or 4 fights now. So that's a tough one. But still, plus 2.48 units, 2.5 units on the night, 21% ROI. Hard to complain about that. Looking over at my card, a lot of the same. So I'm just going to quickly touch over them. I had a unit on the Muhammad Naimov at plus 270. 3 units on the Ikram Aliskerov and Sharabutin Magomedov parlay. I ended up getting suckered into playing Chimaev inside the distance, and it almost looked like a really, really easy win. You know, that's the toughest part about it, is that still at minus 110, it looked about like 50% that he was going to get a win inside the distance. So it is what it is. I'm not too upset about that, but I do wish I kind of would have laid off, because all the writing was on the wall that Usman was about to make this a really tough fight.
Right.
Then I had my other parlay with Saeed Nurmagomedov and Victoria Dudakova. Dudakova made that a little closer than I'd like, did not cover her price tag, and I probably should have paid the price putting in a low-level women's fight into a parlay that juiced, but I did end up getting on the right side of that. I made a parlay with the 2 unders that both missed, and I was thankful I put both of those there because I almost just played them straight up, and happy that worked out the way it did. The over 1.5 rounds in the Bruno Silva Magomedov fight. I told you I hate playing those, man. Yeah. I think my record's pretty good on the overs whenever I do play them, but it's the worst bet to make, man. It's like betting the unders in a football game. Like you don't want to bet that, man. And then the Wood by submission as a hedge for the Naimov bet. I don't know if did he ever get him in?
I don't think so. Wasn't really too close.
Yeah. So plus 4.59 units, 45% ROI. Tough to complain. We love it for the podcast, and hopefully we can keep the ball rolling this week. We start off the night in it's in the lightweight division between Kai Fernandez and Marc Diakiese. I think the UFC is trying to give us a banger here, even if Diakiese, does plan on crotch sniffing for 15 minutes here. A couple of things do interest me. I think early on in this fight, the Fernandez takedown defense is going to be an issue for Diakiese. He's going to stuff those takedowns, and Fernandez does do a good job of making people pay whenever they do have a missed takedown attempt. But I do think that if Diakiese can fight through that early attack of Fernandez and just continue with those takedown attempts, he will eventually become successful. We have seen Fernandez kind of wilt in the past, and something that Diakiese has been able to do in his last 2 wins against Slava Klaus and Damir Hadzovic, he's going 2 for 3 or 5 out of 6 on his takedowns in the 3rd round of those fights. And, I think that if he sticks to the game plan here, this is all Marc Diakiese. The line has done quite a bit of moving since the week started. I think as of now, people are starting to see that submission loss on Fernandez's record a couple years ago. And even though Marc's on this little bit of a skid, he does have the skill level to exploit someone who isn't well-rounded or at least untested at this high level. So Diakiese's the pick, although the line's gotten away from me here. I think you have made a bet on this one, though.
Yeah. I honestly capped Diakiese minus 210-ish. So I'm happy to see that people are agreeing with me because, like you said, tons of movement. At first, I thought I was going to get a bad line on Diakiese, but it seems
he got down to minus 130, I think.
Yeah. So tons of people are buying him back, and I agree with it, man. Many reasons. Guy's 13 UFC fights, much higher level of opponents. He's a much well-rounded guy that, he was the bone crusher coming into the UFC, knocking out Teemu Packlin the way he did. Like, he's got good striking that I think he can hang with Fernandez on the feet. But I think what's most impressive is the way he's been mixing things up lately. The gas tank included with Fernandez. He's a high-level finisher on the regional scene, man. But, like, when things get extended, they start to get hairy. I think the guy's a little bit content to play off his back. Yeah, you see the arm bars, across his record. I don't think those work too high, when you climb the levels of men's MMA. I just feel like after, maybe Diakiese maybe you get a better number live after round 1, but I just think that's Fernandez's only shot here. I think the later this fight goes, Diakiese really starts to take over. Late finish, submission might be on the table.
And you can get the submission prop at plus 1,200 or better for Diakiese. And I don't know. We've seen it in the past by a much lower level fighter. So I like that as well.
Like I was saying, all the control time he's been mounting up lately with the guy that I think we clearly see decline after round 1. Could be a good number to hit, man. Moving down to the women's strawweight division, we got Montserrat Ruiz taking on Eduarda Moura. Man, personally, I just don't really see the fight being too competitive, honestly. I think Montserrat Ruiz was a girl who's never supposed to beat Cheyenne Vlismas, and they have been punishing her ever since. Here's Amanda Lemos, here's Jacqueline Amarim, here's Eduarda Moura, a girl who's 6 inches taller than you. I don't know. I just think Eduarda Moura is going to find herself on top pretty easily. Comes from Jalton Almeida's camp. They both kind of have that just bully style, and I think she winds up on top of Montserrat, and I think you got to play inside the distance. I think if you pick TKO, pick submission, way too likely to get burned. I feel like she's got multiple paths to victories once this fight hits the mat, and Eduarda Moura inside the distance.
I think I'm gonna share a lot of the same sentiment for this fight. I think Ruiz too tough for her own good. I did want to play the Moura by submission because I do think that is her most likely path. And it's plus money, so that's definitely tempting. But Ruiz has put that Mexican toughness on display plenty of times before,
Right.
and to her credit, she's never been submitted. So instead of getting greedy with that plus money prop, I think the inside the distance would be the way I'd look if it were like minus 120 or better. But from what I've seen, we're looking at like minus 135, minus 150. And I think that it's a spot where we lay off, use it as an opportunity to gain more information on someone like Moura, who, to her credit, has been doing what she should be doing on the regional scene, but is still relatively untested. And at least we've seen Ruiz in there with some pretty good talent. So yeah, this one's a layoff fight for me. Moura inside the distance at plus 120 or minus 120 or better, but I don't think we're going to get that whenever the props do drop.
Yeah, she just turned pro last year, so all 9 fights have been like within a year, so still very young. Maybe not worth the juice at this point.
Yeah, she's big. She'll probably do well. Okay, moving. Are we staying in the same weight class, or is this?
I believe so.
Yeah, but staying in the same weight class. Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes. This one seems to be a pretty popular fight to debate on this week. My biggest question is, when is Hill going to have this drop off? I know that she surprised us plenty of times with close fights and wins in spots where, she's the clear underdog. But I do think it's going to happen eventually where she falls off, and I imagine that every loss after 38 years old, it doesn't do her well mentally as a fighter. We saw in her last fight her get pieced up by a jiu-jitsu specialist and Mackenzie Dern for 25 minutes. And that's just a really, really tough look, especially this late in your career. Now you're up against a primary striker, a KO artist at that. And I'm not extremely high on Gomes by any means, but ultimately, when you look at the bigger picture, you have a 14 years younger Brazilian in Brazil who's likely going to have the more memorable moments in the fight with her power against Angela Hill, who is notorious for dropping close decisions. So unless I'm getting like plus one, the line is increasing, but until I start to see like plus 140, plus 150 on Hill, I think I'm okay with laying off this fight. But, anything more than 40% Angela Hill, I like that.
Yeah, man, I've hit Angela Hill at plus money. I don't think she should be plus money here. A girl in Denise Gomes, 2 fights into her UFC career. She hasn't shown me that she can put together, a fight to beat Angela Hill. To me, it kind of just screams market overcorrection. You see a girl who's on back-to-back TKOs, something that's already an anomaly in women's MMA, something I think will stop as she climbs the ranks. And fighting a girl in Angela Hill who's never been TKO'd in her 30-fight career, you got to throw in names like Andrade, Amanda Lemos, Zhang Jiaonan, girls who are more technical and hit just as hard. I throw in just a level of experience, the gas tank, the ability to easily put up 100 significant strikes. I think there's a big wrestling upside for Angela Hill. You see their common opponent, Loma Lugbume, with much different outcomes there. It's kind of like all the skills and stuff point to Angela Hill. It's just some of the intangibles of the age, the location of Brazil, things like that. Those are the only things I really see in Gomes' favor here. She's been an underdog in all 3 of her UFC fights, and now she flips to a favorite to her hardest test to date, man. So that's just something that I personally don't agree with. I could very much see Angela Hill maybe dropping round 1 like she did against Amanda Lemos, getting dropped with a big shot. But I think that the veteran savviness of her, the volume, I think she is going to come back, man. I think rounds 2 and 3 clearly are going to go to Angela Hill at a very high rate in this fight. So, man, plus money was enough for me. I got 1.5 units at plus 105. I don't think I can let anything else go on it, even if it continues to go my way. But man, plus money on the bet Angela Hill was the bet for me.
And I guess if you're on it and you were looking to bet more, you don't see Hill finishing this, right?
Right, so not at all.
You could maybe look at that decision prop, and if there's something that's appealing there, that might even be the way that I'm looking at it if I do wind up on the Hill side. But even then, man, I can't get over the fact that the big moments are going to be – the crowd's going to roar anytime Gomes hits her. And I just don't know if Hill has enough offense, even when she was in her prime at 35, So now at 38, it's just tough.
Valid arguments for sure. We move up a couple weight classes. Light heavyweight, we got Vitor Petrino taking on Modestas Bukauskas. This is one where I saw the line drop to minus 225. I did hit it to return 1 unit. I like backing what I think is a good light heavyweight prospect, man. I think you got a great athlete, a guy with a great frame, a guy who's shown that for a big guy like that can still go the full 3 rounds, can get you round 3 finishes. I think, to be honest with you, I think he's got a better gas tank than Modestas, who I think slows down in his fights from just all the lateral movement he's doing around the cage. I understand, Vitor's striking. It's a work in progress, but he most definitely holds the power edge. Modestas is shown to leave his chin up. I think Vitor's a good wrestler, way more likely to be the one who finds himself on top. Strong. We saw Tyson Pedro, lock up a body lock on Modestas, sling him down to the mat. I think Vitor Petrino locks up a body lock on him, and it's going down to the mat 10 times out of 10, man. Good control, good submission. All the finishing upside leans to the favorite here for me and Vitor Petrino. I think Bukauskas' best chance here would be to keep this fight standing, and he's going to have to run away with the volume because I think he's going to give up takedowns, and it's just going to be hard to ever edge out a decision here in Brazil unless you just run away with this fight. So I do like the Vitor Petrino side pretty good here.
Yeah, I don't know. I see the fight pretty similarly. I don't like laying over minus 200 for light heavyweights that aren't ranked. That's just kind of like in my head. That's what's keeping me off of this. Although I agree with a lot of the points that you made. Bukauskas isn't a top level light heavyweight. It does seem to me whenever he's at a physicality disadvantage, you see that in the octagon as his body language whenever he gets hit or when he's backed up against the fence. I don't really like it. Now that being said, I do think that it's tough to take away from the losses that he has had. All of them being in the UFC, but Jimmy Crute, I mean, that's a top level guy, although he's been, hit or miss as far as if he, gets injured or whatever. Jimmy Crute's hit or miss, but he is a top level guy. The Khalil Roundtree fight, I mean, that's angry Khalil Roundtree, and he got a injury, you don't really know. You didn't really get to see that fight play out. The Michelle Oleksiejczuk split decision. It's, Michelle's a higher level guy. Huh?
Mikhail's a good fighter.
Yeah, I think he's a good fighter. He doesn't have the body by any means, almost the exact opposite body of Petrino here, but he is a decent fighter.
He's also now a middleweight too.
Exactly. And so, then he goes on the regional scene after that terrible leg injury. He puts together 2 solid wins, one of them in the championship rounds. And then he comes back to fight Tyson Pedro and Zach Pauga, and he's delivered when he shouldn't. So I think that this is another spot where it's kind of a fraud check for Bukauskas. He earned his way back into the UFC, and this feels like the first time that they're giving him a not a close fight, but one that he should clearly lose, and he needs to take a step up in competition. I'm with you. The Petrino side is the side that I would wind up on, gun to my head, but I think I'm going to lay off for this Saturday. Moving on, Daniel Marcos versus Victor Hugo. Am I skipping over the?
No, you're good.
Santos.
No, they swapped them, I think.
Okay. So at bantamweight, Daniel Marcos versus Victor Hugo. Marcos, I think that he's the better fighter here. I think that he has, really good pressure. He had a close fight with Davey Grant in his last time out, which is, levels above competition-wise than Victor Hugo's seen. Marcos throws some disgusting, front kicks that are hard to see coming. I already talked about the pressure. And then for the Victor Hugo side, he is not one of my favorite fighters. I actually tried fading him on the Contender Series, and then he pulled out that knee bar from nowhere. And, I just think that he's one of those fighters who swings a ton of power into his shots. When I watch him striking, it comes off more emotional than anything. He's the type of fighter where if he gets caught with a good leg kick, you better believe that he's looking to get that one back. And I don't really like seeing that out of my fighters, especially at a lower weight class. I like somebody who can put together a full game plan and doesn't just have to go for Hail Marys to get the win. And I do feel like Hugo represents that much more than Daniel Marcos, who comes with a little bit more of a technical side of striking where he just systematically can break somebody down with the volume and pressure. So Marcos is my pick. I don't love the price tag. Marcos is my pick, though.
Yeah, Marcos has been a guy that I really, really like. I bet on him in a contender series off that big layoff. I bet him as an underdog in Brazil against Simon Oliveira. I think Victor Hugo kind of represents that style a little bit here. I think Victor Hugo is going to have to try to get Daniel Marcos down to the mat. I think on short notice, combined with the fact that I'm already really not sold on his gas tank, I think that's going to be a detriment to him come rounds 2 and 3 here. Marcos is a far cleaner striker, man. I really like what I see, switching the levels with his attacks. You talked about the nasty kicks. American top team, man. This guy is really, really improving. Even if you think he was, gifted the Grant decision, it's a tough fight with a very tough veteran. A fight that he's going to grow from, man. I was looking at fight doesn't go the distance here, so I think it could be pretty one-sided. So I do like Marcos inside the distance. I think he finds a TKO in rounds 2 or 3, man. I'm pretty confident on that, to be honest. I like Daniel Marcos. I like backing him. Then we'll move on to the Zaleski Dos Santos versus Rinat Fakhritdinov fight. Rinat, first leg to the parlay that you and I are both on. One of the rising prospects at 170 here. The guy's a good grappler. He knows how to stick to the game plan, high fight IQ. I think he's just going to have real success grounding Zaleski or just pushing him onto the fence and riding out extended periods of time. I think the pressure that he brings to the octagon is also a great style to negate some, Zaleski, someone who needs his space, to get his kickoffs and get his game working. Pressure of Rinat is going to negate a whole lot. Zaleski as well, his style, I think it has to be an inside the distance here. He doesn't really have the highest volume. I think he's going to be giving up takedowns. I just don't like his style to winning a decision against Rinat. Rinat likely finds his way on top. I don't know if he finds the finish, man. It could be a very dominant decision like Brian Battle. I appreciate some guys like him who are position over submission. That's like, they're okay with just riding out as long as it means winning. So he's an easy guy to back, man. I like Rinat. I think you're on the same boat this Saturday.
Yes, I think we got him in the parlay at like minus 275, and he's minus 375 now or something. Nice. I think this is the biggest setup fight on the card, to be honest with you. I do feel like they're partial to Rinat. They give him fights like Brian Battle and Kevin Lee, and they both, one of them coming off the Ultimate Fighter win, and then Kevin Lee being Kevin Lee. They're both favorable fights, in my opinion, and this just seems like another kind of aged-out guy who is a primary striker, doesn't have any submission wins, maybe 1 or 2, and isn't going to offer much whenever Rinat does get him to the ground. Like you said, the control time is nice. I think, I guess he's so strong that there's always an opportunity for him to lock up a submission if you do scramble and give up your neck. So I don't know. I do really like Rinat here. Happy that we're both on him. Don't really have too much to add to that though. Moving up, or I guess moving down to a catchweight 165. Elves Brenner taking on Kaynan Kruschewsky. Didn't, in all fairness, I didn't do too much. I was more interested in the Brenner versus Ribovic's fight. But this one is cool. Kruschewsky lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil, coming off that win off the Contender Series. Brenner, I think that there's a lot of market overcorrection for beating somebody as good as Guram Kutateladze. I don't think that Brenner is that good, but it doesn't necessarily make me want to immediately jump on this guy taking the fight on a few days' notice. So I'll look at it a little bit more. It looks like the line's like minus 200 Brenner, plus 160 for Kruschewsky. I'd have to really be impressed by Kruschewsky looking over his tape to even want to play it. And I'm not sure if I'm going to get there. I feel like there are better spots on the card. I don't like Brenner as a fighter though. He can take a beating. So I'll pick Brenner. I'll pick Brenner, but I don't really have a reason why. So
I'm with you, man. I need to do my due diligence on this one as well. You talked about Brenner being a massive underdog in both fights, and now he's, you got to bet him at juice. And his style oftentimes is predicated on him coming back from behind, taking a whooping early, and I don't like to lay juice on that. So I do need to do some tape on it as well, but I'll take the guy on the full camp and Elves Brenner. Moving on to the main card, we got Ismail Bonfim taking on Vince Pichel. Back again as another massive favorite after dropping the ball last time to BSD. I told you that Jonathan Martinez bet was one of the best ones of the year. Your bet on BSD was pretty good as well, man.
Thank you.
But I think it's much better reason for him to be a big favorite in this spot. All the intangibles lean his way: younger, faster. The guy improving versus a clear finished product in Vince Pichel. Ismail and his brother both, man, real clean boxers. I think there's a distinct advantage on the feet. With Pichel, I do feel like I've seen a slowdown, a bit of a decline. He doesn't really look as fast, doesn't react as well. And I just feel like he's got to have takedowns in this fight to win. I don't know how easy they're going to come. And he's never really been a very dangerous guy. So, I don't know. All the moments are going to be in Ismail's favor, and Vince Pichel's best chances to win some minutes on the mat and try to steal a decision in Brazil. I don't like it. And I very well could see the 41-year-old get finished for the first time in recent memory for me, man. I'm going to take Ismail Bonfim.
Yeah. This is a good bounce back fight for Bonfim. I wish that there are some arguments to be made for Pichel, but I do think that they're long gone at this point in his career. He doesn't fight often enough to really know how he's going to look here. You're right. He did look worse against Madsen more than a year ago. So I can't imagine him coming out looking better against way better competition. I don't know. I think Bonfim's significantly better than Madsen at this point in their careers. So it's tough to bet on something that doesn't happen, like Vince Pichel getting finished. But I do think that this is a spot where Bonfim can kind of make up for that loss against BSD as a huge favorite.
With you.
Moving on to the middleweight fight between Rodolfo Vieira and Armen Petrosian. This goes one of two ways, right?
Right.
But Rodolfo goes in there, gets that power double leg and just muscles him to the ground. Can make him stay there and gets a submission early, or Armen fights out of these takedowns like he has in his last few fights, makes Rodolfo work, and then just slowly picks him apart over 15 minutes. He's a far superior striker. As high level of a submission artist as Vieira is, Armen is that much higher in the striking, in my opinion. Yep. Vieira hasn't really done what I'd want to say. He's given up a couple of fights that I don't think that he should. And Petrosian seems like the type of guy who is going to give him not an easy win, to say the least. So unless Rodolfo gets that early finish, I do think that this is Petrosian's fight. This is one of the fights that I was thinking of, the round 3. That looks good. And then just the regular Petrosian money line at minus 105, plus 100. I think that there's value there because it could go to decision. Rodolfo's a tough dude. Even if his body quits on him, he's tough. He's not going out. So,
yeah, I think I see it pretty similar to you. It was a pretty tough fight for me to call. Definitely a tough fight for me to bet. Not oftentimes am I really in agreement with all the love for Armen Petrosian against a grappler, but I do find it hard for Rodolfo to put together a clean 15 minutes here to beat Petrosian. I know he's got world-class jiu-jitsu. He's probably more dangerous than anybody that's grounded Armen Petrosian in the past. And I'm not necessarily sold on Armen's takedown defense, but the guy's been safe on bottom, and he knows how to not make mistakes. He knows the second and third rounds are going to start back on the feet, and that's where he's comfortable. I don't know, man. Rodolfo could go in here and look minus 400, and that's what's kind of keeping me off Armen Petrosian. I could look back and be like, damn, that was a dumb bet, because he's gotten grounded by a ton of guys in the UFC so far, and this is definitely somebody that could take advantage of somebody on the mat. So it's tricky for me. But, man, if this gets outside of round 1, I really do think Armen's going to start taking over this fight. A late finish is live. I'd have to check the odds, but I think I even saw an outrageous number on Armen Petrosian decision, which, like you talked about, I think holds some clear value as well, man. Moving on, Caio Baralho taking on Abus Magomedov at 185 as well. Second leg to the parlay with Rinat. I think we both have more than 2 units on this one here. And Caio's a guy we like to back. Caio's a guy we think the UFC likes a lot. Surprised he's not the co-main event here again. I think you got a complete fighter, man. One who's well-rounded, one who has a clean southpaw stance, almost a karate, style. He's got some good footwork, got a good little left hand on him. He's not a guy that I see put himself in danger too much on the feet, and he's smart with his takedowns. He's one of these guys, like I said earlier about Rinat, position over submission, win at all costs. He doesn't care if the fight's exciting. He's okay to ride out top time here. And, his gas tank has shown some minutes that could be a little bit sketchy, but you want to talk about sketchy gas tanks, and you got to go to his opponent Abus Magomedov, man. I don't want to make allegations, but he is a guy that was coming from PFL. We didn't really get to see too much of him in his debut fight, and then he gets the Sean Strickland fight, and that truly was one of the worst displays of cardio that I've ever seen in my life. Now you throw him in front of a live crowd, travel him down to Brazil. If he doesn't get the knockout early, man, I really do think we see a very clear repeat, man. I think Caio starts to take over this fight, starts to find his takedowns, and if he wants to ride out a clear decision, he can. But I think there's a late finish on the table. I could see Caio getting a late sub.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it the same way. I think I put Caio in my parlay at minus 375, and that's gone down pretty significantly. So that's a little upsetting, but the Rinat line's also gone the opposite way. So it's kind of evened out as far as our parlay is concerned. But yeah, right here I've got written down Baralho round 3 plus 1,100, and then the round 2 plus 550. I think that's good too. Like if you're only risking 0.5 and you sprinkle it 0.25 on the round 2 and round 3, I like that. I like the return on investment there. And like you said, if anybody's got cardio issues, I got to imagine it's a boost here. Caio, although he has kind of been that guy who doesn't look for the submission or can't find the submission, he did show us last time that he has that in his back pocket if he really does want to go for it. And I think Abus is the type of guy to give him those opportunities come late in the fight. So, yeah, I'm happy that we're both on the Baralho line, even if we've lost a little value as the week has moved on. Moving up to the heavyweight division, Rodrigo, or is it light heavyweight? No, heavyweight. It's a heavyweight, yeah. Rodrigo Nascimento versus Dontel Mays. This has already happened once before. I don't really know why we're running it back. I don't think that Dontel Mays has gotten any better. And this was the win that Nascimento has over Mays was one of the more decisive wins that he has in the UFC. So, I mean, I'm really struggling to find out why they're doing this again. Yeah. You can get the inside the distance at plus 130. It didn't look like it was going to go much further if he didn't get the finish at the time that he did the first fight. Mm-hmm. So I do think that he's going to find the finish again. So to get plus 130 on something that we've already seen, I think that that's an auto bet, right?
Yeah, likely, man. It's a rematch no one asked for. No one asked this to be on the main card.
There's probably better spots. I'll finish off with that. Yeah. I'm asking for it, betting on the fight. So.
I do think both guys have improved. I think we've seen Nascimento improve with his hands a little bit, and I think we've seen Mays work on his ground game a lot, mixing in some takedowns and some of his wins recently. So I do think there's improvements from both fighters since then, but I don't know how significantly that gap in the ground has closed if Rodrigo finds his way on top. With Dontel Mays, it's like, good Lord, dude, you got the foundation to be a great fighter. You're athletic, you have the best frame, you train with John Jones. Just the skill set's not there, man. The killer instinct, something, it's just not there. I don't like his bottom game. I don't really like his takedown defense. So I do think at plus 130, taking a stab on something that's already happened could look pretty similar down in Brazil on Saturday.
It's Maurice Green 2.0. It's like got the body for it,
yeah.
But no.
I don't know. You see that whizzer he hit John Jones with? Might be pretty deadly on Saturday. Nah, I don't know, man. Mays is not a fighter I like to back. No. Co-main event, we got Gabriel Bonfim taking on Nicholas Dalby at 170. I know we've already seen Gabriel or Ismail take an L in the UFC, but I don't know, man. I think Ismail, yeah, he already lost in the UFC. I think it's going to be a while before we see Gabriel lose the O. I do think he's a legitimate prospect, man. He's in a talent stacked division, but at 26 years old, I think he's a future top 15 guy. I don't want to say maybe top 5, but I do think he's a future top 15 guy. I think the boxing is really, really sharp, man. The footwork to walk you down, the pressure's good. The guy's got nasty submissions. Like, he's very dangerous on the mat, man. 12 of his wins by sub, all of his 15 wins inside the distance. But with Dalby standing in front of him, you got a tough vet, man, with 30 fights, double the experience. Technically never been finished before. But he gets dropped a whole lot, man. And I do feel like, while he did pop, a Jesse Ronson on steroids is probably just as good as Gabriel Bonfim, jumping out of the bed. I don't know, just like putting his shoes on and instantly fighting. I just feel like Gabriel Bonfim has the ability to drop Nicholas Dalby like a lot of guys do, and then find the sub on the mat because he's very talented. What I like about Dalby is his gas tank, the ability to push a hard 15 minutes. I feel like that's the only way Gabriel Bonfim gets fraud checked. I don't think he's a guy who's going to go out there and get starched or get finished. He's going to be the guy who goes out there and puts it on someone and then gasses late and gives up the fight. Dalby has that potential in him. I just don't think he's the one to take the O, man. So I'm going to go Gabriel Bonfim. I won't be betting him because, to be honest with you, man, with Dalby's durability, this fight set at under 1.5. I think it's a little trappy. I think it's just a little tricky. Gonna just lay off and enjoy watching Gabriel Bonfim, man.
Yeah, you talked about Bonfim being in a talent-rich division. Somehow he's, managed to avoid pretty much all the talent. Dude,
Officer Giles now. Come on. Put your hands behind your back.
I don't know, dude. This is definitely not a spot I like this number at. This does look like a fraud check for Bonfim. Finished all of his wins. Dalby not been finished in 30 fights. But it would not be anything new for Dalby to spoil the party. He has been an underdog in 4 of his last 5 wins.
Cashed on him against Salikov last time, actually.
Yeah. He's extremely durable, makes guys work at a high pace, and he offers some unique striking to deal with. I kind of liken him to Neil Magny in the fact that he gives fighters a weird fight every single time, and sometimes that's enough to win out a split decision, which is all that he'd need here. Officially, I'm picking Bonfim to win, but I'm struggling to see how he gets it done, and because I can't clearly see how a -650 is going to win, I gotta think Dalby or pass. And in my head, I'm like, how bad could a +460 look if he doesn't get finished?
Right.
Like, I feel like that's not a wasted unit if he makes it to the judges, which I fully anticipate, just because I can't see him getting finished. So I don't know. I'm trying to talk myself into a +460. Mm-hmm. I've been pretty hard on myself since missing out on Sean Strickland +500. So these, anytime it's just supposed to be a squash match, I'm really trying to look at it hard. And the fact that I can't clearly see how a -650 could win is definitely a red flag in my head. Maybe a spot where I could, waste a unit on Dalby. I've done stupider stuff. Moving on to the main event in the heavyweight division, Jailton Almeida taking on Derek the Black Beast Lewis. It's pretty crazy that we're getting like a -3,000, a -10,000 fight doesn't go the distance. And it's hard to argue, man. I do think that one of these two guys are going to look really, really good. I watched Jailton Almeida, a couple of his fights earlier this week. He needs that takedown because his entries come from really far away. And yeah, he's super athletic, but I think if Derek could make him bite on a feint, and I do think that there's going to be an opportunity for Derek Lewis to land an uppercut similar to Curtis Blades. And I think Curtis, although he doesn't disguise them very well, I think he disguises his takedowns better than Jailton Almeida. Mm-hmm. So there is subject for Derek Lewis to give us another KO King moment here. That being said, Jailton Almeida is probably the best grappler he's faced. Like Alexei Oleinik's up there, And if Alexei Oleinik had Jailton Almeida's body, he gets that finish. He gets that scarf hold finish, you know? I think Derek Lewis gets subbed. You can find Jailton Almeida by submission rounds 1, 2, and 3 for like minus 110, minus 105, something like that. And that's probably how I see it. Derek Lewis is, I don't know. I guess he could fold up and roll over and just like hope that the ref steps in. But I think that he's going to sell out for the knockout early. If he doesn't get it, he's going to roll over and just wait for Jailton to lock in a submission. So Jailton's the pick. Obviously, the under is the play. I don't think you're going to get any value on it, but yeah, that's my take on it.
I was intrigued. I was really intrigued with the original matchmaking. With Curtis Blades being such a good wrestler, American style wrestling, I really wanted to see that tested against Jailton Almeida. With this one, Lewis is the type to just fly down to Brazil and collect a fat check and go home.
Why not if you're making what he's making?
And I know he's like, he just beat dude last time, Pessoa, but like before that, what was it, dude? He'd lost 4 of his last 5 fights. Career definitely on the downward trajectory, definitely not sniffing a title fight again. I don't know. It just kind of screams like, hey, I'm just going to just collect some more money before I have to hang it up. But the dude can KO anybody on the roster, and he's shown you that he can knock out guys that want to take him down. The fight that I kind of look at for me was the Spivak fight. Spivak kind of resembles Jailton Almeida, but Spivak's not the double legs and things that Jailton's going to be shooting. Spivak likes the body locks and the trips and things, and kind of kept him out of harm's way from some of Derek Lewis's strikes. It's hard for me to really overlook the skill gap between these two on the mat, and it's hard for me to overlook the fact that I think Jailton's shooting a takedown 10 seconds into this fight, and when it gets to the mat, I don't know, man. I don't think the Derek Lewis just fuck you stand-up strength. It might work. I just feel like he's going to find himself back on the mat again. And it's a guy in Jailton Almeida who in the Shamil fight, he didn't rush the early finish. He was okay to just sit there and control and float and let this big guy wear himself out. And it could be something similar again here, man. I would love nothing more than a Derek Lewis knockout, but I do feel like, again, we're not going to see this guy relevant for a title again. So I do hope Jailton Almeida comes in here and ragdolls him and finds the finish in round 1. And in terms of prospects and where the division's headed, I hope Jailton Almeida comes through here.
I mean, if you're looking at the Derek Lewis side, the only way to play it is Lewis by KO, and plus 475 looks much better.
KO king.
Yeah, it looks much better than plus 360, Yeah. Plus 475, and you're talking about a guy in Jailton Almeida who was an underdog coming into that Contender Series fight, and then I guess everybody saw that he was pretty dang good. And now
he ate some clean like left hooks, I believe, in the Shamil fight takedown too.
Yeah, you're right. And now he's minus 500 against Derek Lewis, most KOs in the UFC. I think looking back on it, if Derek Lewis gets the knockout, it's a really stupid pass-up play for everybody. Yeah, I don't know.
Hard to do, man. Hard to do on short notice. So never been one of our favorites to back.
No, not at all. Always
a quitter.
Yeah, we actually always pay the price when we try and fade it. So.
We do, man. That completes the card, man. All 13 fights going down in Sao Paulo. Again, I'm really pumped for, man. I think 11 of the 13 or something are favored to end inside the distance. I think it's a violent night of fights. Real excited for it. Appreciate you hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.
Peace.